Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, coaches around the world, welcome to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets. It's your boy Road Dogg with the man, the myth, the king of Kelowna. I still hope he's going to run for mayor one day. King Karl Bryan. Shoots, how are you, bud?
Shoots, how's it going, Road Dogg? How are you, my man?
I'm doing really well, dude. It's doing really well. Been a good week. Gonna be a super busy week, as per usual. It's funny how that just seems to happen. Hey, it's like I don't even know how you get into the rhythm of feeling like you're accomplishing anything because it just never seems to stop. So.
This is it. By the way, Road Dogg took me for a little drive. Don't know if I'm going to let it out of the bag, but in his new car, ladies and gentlemen, and it was one fine machine, of which I asked him, will you please slow down, Road Dogg? Please slow down, shoot.
Listen, bud, just pay back for when, this almost sounds weird, when you took me out on the Sea-Doo, you know. And you're just but here's the thing, folks. Out on the Sea-Doo, I do not do the reach around hanging on to. No, I'll hang on to the handles in the back. Thank you very much. As much as Karl probably wants to do the two-man luge with me, not going to happen. Shoots, just get that right out of your head. That's going to be either you. That's going to be you in Utah. I could see you guys doing the two-man luge at the Olympics.
If somebody saw us on that Sea-Doo, that was one of Road Dogg's most uncomfortable moments of his life. They would take a photo of that. That would be the front of the podcast all day long.
If you had to guess how many times I just thought it'd just be so much better for me to let go and fall back and get
And plus, we went at a pretty decent clip. I love, folks, we'll get into this. I got a Sea-Doo, and I am ridiculously proud of my Sea-Doo. And I don't know if we've ever said this funny one. Road Dogg and I got a few buds, and they have, these big monster boats, and they hang out at this particular beach, and it's a lot of fun, and the water's only, 4 feet deep, so we can just sit there and drink a beer, to do. And I roll up in my Sea-Doo, and I'm the big deal, and I tease them, right? Because all the kids want to go on my Sea-Doo, all the dads want to take out my Sea-Doo. The Sea-Doo is the star of the show every weekend, and I'm doing little 360s and spraying everybody. And anyway, so I have a Sea-Doo, and I am pathetically excited about it, impressed by it, or whatever it is, proud of it. That's what I'm trying to say. And
so what you're saying is you don't have to be the big thing to be the big show. This is sort of like you in real life, bud. It's perfect. It's amazing how that just worked itself right in there. Hey, listen, by the way, let's get into this for a second, because the joke that you got from your dad, by the way, I have to share this. So,
true.
Okay, this is true story, folks. This is from Skinny himself. So my dad's close friend passed away, and here's the story he tells. Dad, Dave died, and I was a pallbearer, and I was walking the casket out, and I accidentally bumped into the wall pretty hard. Remarkably, Dave wakes up. It was a modern day miracle, and the scene was like no other. Dave wasn't in the best of health, obviously. 3 years go by. Dave, poor bugger, passes away again. As we're walking the casket out of the church, this time his wife Judy says to me, "Watch the wall." How many times has he told you that joke?
No, far too many. And he says it with the same enthusiasm as my old man. I think all of our old men do this, but yeah, my dad, he tells the same joke over and over again, and with the same enthusiasm, like as though I haven't heard it. And of course, right, I laugh because the way he says it. Skinny is a funny guy. If you get a chance to sit down, my dad, he doesn't drink beer, but he'll have a coffee with you, and he will keep you laughing, as you know, Road Dogg. Funny boy.
Doing better and better, I hope. Skinny's doing better and better.
He's getting there, Shoots. He's getting there. Yeah, thanks. The grace of God, he's doing good. Thanks, buddy.
All right, I'm going to jump into this. So I'm reading this first question. I'm like, it's kind of a little Huh. To me, here's the question. Do you approach selling coaching to a $10 million business differently than you would a $350,000 business? The only reason I'm questioning, like 350, that's a pretty specific number. Like why not 250? I'm curious on that. But regardless, Shoots, would you your approach to selling to a $10 million business versus a smaller scaled, obviously 350K business, do you approach those differently, or do you pretty much have the same sort of game plan going in?
That's a big gap. 10 million to 350,000. It's specific, but
It's sort of
anyways,
like
okay.
a difference A between our stature and between our bank accounts. Like this is just how it works, right?
Donkey. All right. So look, you don't sell to companies, right? You sell to individuals. So there's your frame. Companies don't make decisions, people do. So that's critical. And then what do people do? People buy for emotional reasons, right? You'd like to think that they buy for factual to make more money. But the truth is, emotional reasons will go. They'll get there of the thought of making more money, but ultimately they'll hand over their credit card, sign the paperwork for emotional reasons. Just imagine the last time you bought a car, right? You spent far more on your car than you planned, and you did it for emotional reasons and the way that it made you feel to do, right? And fear doesn't rule the world. Envy does. Again, I think that's a frame. Like, actually, did I send this in an email or it's coming in an email? I'm going to, I've got it as like a part, but no one wants to get left behind. I think that the power in that statement is insane. In fact, here's an exercise in influence. Watch the infomercial Personal Power. It's the first one. But basically, personal power, it took Tony Robbins from like a nobody to $100 million coaching brand, and getting called up by the likes of, presidents like Bill Clinton, Andre Agassi, Tom Brady, Wayne Gretzky, Oprah, you name the big name. And basically, they've called up Tony Robbins for a bit of advice. Basically, it got that personal power, and you'll watch it. You'll think it's cheesy and he's got big teeth or whatever. Possibly that's what you're thinking. That would be a wrong way to be looking at it. That got him access to elite, the elite of the elite, billionaires, and in like record time. And by the way, don't watch it once and then say, "Oh wow, that was good." Watch it multiple times. And so so I watch it. What do I see? I saw the many ways he manufactures the impression that you, as in the person viewing, that hasn't already purchased his thing. Okay, so in this case, it's his program, had totally missed out on what everybody else, more specifically celebrities, superstars, pro athletes, elites of the elite, basically every person that you admire, were already participating in, right? So again, those people bought. Why haven't you? Are you going to whip out your credit card? You're about to be given an opportunity. And by the way, there will be a limit. There will be scarcity attached to that offer given to you, right? So again, nobody wants to get left behind. When I watch that, that's what I see, and I think that might be one of those things that you might want to write down and kind of come back to. It might be hitting you like a punch in the mouth, and it might be something that just over time, as you see it a little bit, as you get better at framing your coaching, framing your talks, framing your prospecting calls, framing your the meetings that you have with joint venture partners and whatnot, and people that you want to influence, you might just see that working at a higher level. So anyway, so that's just something. And by the way, the alpha, so you might be thinking, oh yeah, but that's the lightweight. Like the alpha of the alpha males, the elite of the elite, definitely this $10 million company that you're referencing. I don't know, they wilt under this kind of social and emotional pressure, but they whip out their credit card, right? So when done correctly, high-end coaching clients, that $10 million guy that you describe, I think that he's going to, whip out their credit card as opposed to be asking how much, which no doubt that's the frame that you're ultimately looking for. And the other thing is you're hearing this and like, okay, look, I like it, right? Are you going to be like a natural? Are you going to be really good at making people feel like they're getting left behind in the first chance? And the answer is no. And again, you want them to, and then when they buy your coaching, it's kind of like they're racing to catch up. Think about those as two frames. Nobody wants to get left behind, and now they're going to whip out their credit card, and you're going to help them race to catch up, right? And by the way, this is how I sold $100,000 plus up to $500,000 coaching programs in the mid 2000s. And I will tell you that yes, they're going to make more money. Yes, they're going to be systematized. Yes, they're going to increase the valuation of their company and all those matter of fact and all of those types of things, right? But believe me, I was talking about, some emotional factors. And speaking of emotional factors, like, there's emotional factors that kind of, what do? They affect, they influence everybody. You probably know if you're a coach, hopefully you've understand what I mean. But greed, envy, wrath, pride, lust, anger, fear, love, hate, these types of ones. I'm sure there's more that I'm not thinking of here, but the affluent have a particular set of emotional factors. I don't know, like emotional hot buttons that you might want to consider, and some of them might surprise you a little bit, like insecurity. Without doubt, you introduced me to a professional hockey player, a professional athlete making millions of dollars, and I'll show you somebody who's driven more by loss than they are by gain. Right? I'm going to go at 80% probability. I'm sure there's a few, and there's always the anomaly, but we don't deal with anomalies, right? We always deal with percentages. That's the way to build. That's the way to scale. That's the way to build. That's the way to do things on a mass level, right? Fear of being found out to be fakers. Again, without just what is that, like imposter syndrome is what I'm trying to think of, like that. If you don't think about this, if you don't have imposter syndrome, then you're not pushing, right? Imposter syndrome, like, you should have it as opposed to try to avoid it. They're also wanting, they want to be today. They don't want to be yesterday. And this is, again, where you introduce me to somebody who's like highly driven and highly successful. They end up being worth $1 million, and then they go to 5 million, they go to 10 million, then they go to 25 million. That does not go away, right? I'll give you the red hot tip. That does not go away. Some people get it a little bit under control, which I think is a good thing. And I think somebody who's worth a lot of money should spend some time there, but they're probably not. And that's not the way that I'd be selling them coaching, right? On that, curing their desire to be highly driven. It's not what I'm going over here. Like feeding their emotional emptiness, definitely. Kind of like giving them gold stars. Like we've all been to school, right? And we got the gold star, we got the happy face. By giving them those things, you'd be surprised. Like, you're coaching a $10 million business and they achieve something and you acknowledge it specifically. Absolutely something you should be doing, right? And another thing that, again, very consistent. You introduce me to somebody who's doing really well. Like, I'll assume that $10 million company we're describing here, we're netting out plenty. And this isn't year one at $10 million and they're netting, 2%, right? We'll assume that these guys are doing 7 figures and it's sticking, and it has for a period of time. Well, they're asking themselves this question: what's the point of being rich? Ridiculously common, right? So, and then you help them answer that, right? And that's where all of a sudden growth, contribution, philanthropy, etc., will come into it. But the affluent $10 million companies, people who are going to buy coaching from you, and $10 million companies are insecure in many ways. They certainly worry about going backward, about losing money, losing status, losing privileges. Again, you introduced me to a professional athlete. I'll introduce you to somebody who's driven by loss over gain all day long. So again, I say professional athlete. Think of an elite business person as, being exactly that. I've had this conversation with my wife many a times. I'm not the easiest guy in the world to be married to. This truth. I'm not something I'm proud of. It's just, it's my foundation. I'm very driven to an absolute fault. And that can be tough, right? So again, understanding the kind of, the psychology of the person that you're sitting in front of, right? And by the way, if you've never been rich, you have no frame of reference. But if you have been rich, you know what you're missing out by losing it, right? Like, again, and don't think I say that their emotional hot buttons live in there somewhere, big time. And I'd say again, they're aware, like this $10 million company, the successful, the elite entrepreneur is ridiculously aware of aggravations, inconveniences, the financial difficulties endured daily by everyday ordinary people that they once were, right? And I'll assume that they're not from the Happy Sperm Club, right, where they grew up with daddy's gold card. And and they lose sleep about waking up and being back there. So when you're selling coaching, you are selling defense, like insurance, right? It's like you're selling defense of that in a lot of ways. But most importantly here, these emotional factors, you got to tie into emotions. The best brands in the world, Road Dog, as you well know, they make you feel, right? Like you bought a new car recently that's pretty crushing. Look, it's the way it makes you feel, right? Coke makes you happy. Mercedes makes you successful. Disney makes you proud. The best marketers in the world are intentionally pulling on your heartstrings. So answer, Road Dog. I mean, it's a difficult one, but comparing a $10 million company to a $350,000 business, like there's contrast there on steroids. Maybe that makes it a great question, or maybe there's a little bit too much contrast, not sure. But understand that when you're dealing with somebody who recognizes themselves, identifies as an elite, as we'll call rich, right? Wealthy is a far better word than rich, by the way. You can be rich for an hour. You want to be wealthy for a lifetime and for generations. So anyway, so that's my, I feel like understanding that, these, like the $350,000 guy and the 10 million, you're not selling to a company, you're selling to an individual, and an individual is going to be influenced by this stuff. And the guy who's highly successful can be, that insecurity, that fear of, being found out to be a faker, not being today, but being, yesterday's nudes. What's the point of being rich? Understanding that these are things that they're going through, I think can increase those conversions and your confidence to help them and direct them and provide a roadmap at a super high level. So what would you say, Shits?
It's interesting, actually. A couple things that struck me there. You mentioned the $10 million business versus the $350,000 company. Like just those two words alone, right? Like one is a business, one is just like company, right? Like if that's gross profit, like what are you really netting out of that? So just the different mindsets that go along with that. And the one thing I was interesting as well is when you're talking about the $10 million dude, he still has imposter syndrome, like everybody else, right? Like that's the crazy part now. But like it's the thing that I likened it to was once you've flown first class, going back to coach is really freaking hard, right? Like it's just you've seen it and you don't really want to go back there, right? And I don't know if that sounds douchey or whatever. I don't fly first class. You just have your own private jets and helicopters, but you know what I mean? Like it's just
no, I do not. No,
but one of those things, I just thought that was very interesting how you're saying you're selling defense, you're selling the protection against the failure of the business. It's so crazy. I've never thought of that before because what's everybody thinking of? I'm going to help you get leads. I'm going to help you grow. I'm going to help you do this, blah, 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 growth, 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 growth. And you and I, we talked about that the other day. It's like everybody's got this blind target of $1 million. It's like, well, is it really $1 million? Is that truly what you need? Anyways, I thought that was very, very interesting. But the question I have for you out of all of that, because there's a ton to unpack there. You mentioned this feeling of like this getting left behind. Like, is there anything specifically, like how the heck do you do that to make them feel like they're getting left behind?
Yeah, nice. How would I? And I just actually, okay, let me answer that. But before I do that, I just want to just cement what you just said. That is exactly like the guy doing $1 million and the guy doing 350. Again, you're selling to individuals, but the insurance, the defense is kind of what you just said it better, right? Like that's what I was trying to bring across. That's really important. Don't just sell defense. That wouldn't be the right way to do it, right? But remember, they don't want to get left behind. They don't want to become part of this elite club and 10 million, ripping around in Lambos and part of the Ferrari club, et cetera. And then all of a sudden not be able to join the group, if that makes sense. A bit of defense. I don't know. Hopefully you guys are getting that, but you sell individuals, you don't sell companies. Nice. So getting left behind. Yeah, that's some examples. Like every day, I think we see it in real estate, depending upon where you're at. But right now, real estate, as we talk, real estate is, it's skyrocketing in many, many markets, right? Well, so one guy, like if you only own one property, you're not really winning, right? Because if you sold, like, let's assume you're not going to move out of the market into a less vibrant one. If you sold your one house, you'd have to buy another one. Presumably, you really wouldn't get the gain because the gain would offset with the price that you now have to pay on the second house, right? So you got to own two to really win. So they hear stories of people crushing it and buying new cars and the capital gains and the net worth, et cetera. So again, that could be an example of how you'd frame that up to feel like somebody's getting left behind, right? Competitors, look, you see this all the time. Competitors using Facebook and waking up with copious amounts of leads every day, and they're still cold calling. They're still doing direct outreach. They're staring at their phone, hoping the damn thing's going to ring, right? Again, they feel left behind. There's local partnerships between companies going ahead, behind the scenes, and they're not in the quote unquote in the know, right? There's events happening, and others are going to be presenting. You see this in our world, Road Dog, right? Like big event going on, and others are going to be presenting, others are going to be exhibiting, others are going to be, getting backstage passes and invited to these private parties, and then others aren't, right? Like the Grammys and the Oscars, they're all about the private parties and who's getting invited, and it's a big deal in that world, right? Big companies getting built in a booming economy, and there's like that company we just referenced, like the $10 million, even though it might be profitable, is just kind of like treading water. Again, gosh, with all this inflation, are you winning? You and I, Road Dog, we get a mutual bud, very close one, that he owns a trucking company, and again, everybody's else rates are going through the roof, and their drivers have never been busy. Well, if you weren't set up prior to the boom to have the drivers and have the flexibility to be able to spend the time to go back to your customers and explain that rates are increasing, what do? You get busy, 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 and you just keep driving the same trucks for the same fees, and then looking back going, wow, you know what I mean? Like I just missed out on an opportunity to raise that. And then there's crypto, Road Dog, a feeling left behind. I mean, I think that's probably maybe the poster child for it. Look, mentioned Tony Robbins earlier, right? Like, how does Tony Robbins convince you to start investing? I've been asked a lot, a book that I would recommend, without doubt, Money Master the Game is one that, and it's not just my love of Tony Robbins. Like, again, people love him, people hate him. It's completely irrelevant to be able to, if you think being wealthy is a good idea or something that you'd like to participate in and you'd like to bring others with you, to not read that book multiple times, I think would be a mistake, right? But I'll leave that for anybody listening. But here's what Tony Robbins does in the book when he talks about investing. And I'll make a bit of a meal of this, but it's something to the effect of, he's got two twins, okay? Like, again, they're twins, not by accident for the story. And one started at roughly the age of 20, and then the other one started at roughly the age of 40, right? Well, the one that started at 20 put $80,000 in, at roughly, $4K a year for 20 years. And then let's assume it had like a 10% return, right? Thereabouts. Well, the other twin put in $100,000, $4,000 a year at 25 years, right? So he put $20,000 more in, and he invested for 5 years longer, and they both got a 10% return, right? Well, the one that started early had I think this is on their 60th birthday, whatever it is, that the story ends with the one that started early had $2.5 million in their bank account. And the other twin, who invested for 5 years longer and invested about 20% more money, ended up with $400,000, right? 400,000 versus 2.5 million. That might be the contrast of our example earlier of, what was it? It was a 10 million and a 350 or whatever. Not quite there, but that, like 2.5 million and 400 grand. I don't know what that is, but that's like 505. That's more than a 500% difference, right? So, and then his advice is to get started, right? So, the story probably leaves you feeling like you're involved in story number 2 or twin number 2, not number 1, right? And again, he says it all in a story, and his goal is to try to get you to start investing. So you see how, you're left behind in a very real and tangible way. In fact, the number 2 twin absolutely got left behind by the tune of, $2.1 million, right? So that's and I'd say again, with our software, profit acceleration software, it's like we don't need to frame it up in a in a story. It's just that we have coaches that have been doing it for a decade, and they're still out there going to B&I groups and whatnot, trying to get a client. And then we've got coaches that are leveraging our software, and they're building teams of 10, 25, 50, 100 coaches under them, leveraging the software, using, legitimate tools that basically do a lot of the hard work for them, and printing off roadmaps and guides that their coaches and themselves can use with the small business owner. Well, our coaches have built teams of, say, 50 coaches underneath them, and a lot of other coaches don't have anybody else, right? The moral of the story, and what I would encourage anybody to be thinking about, when Tony Robbins basically tries to influence you, he tells you a story. He gives you a metaphor. He gives you an example. And that is something that I think, you guys should be thinking about, right? So, like, what story? So now you're a coach and you're thinking, okay, what kind of story? Well, tell a story of how, there were two business owners and one chose to leverage, maybe it's our software, maybe it's just your services, but maybe it's profit acceleration, the simulator, it's profit acceleration software, it's the profit acceleration roadmap. And then there were two business owners, and he accepted, the roadmap that was put in front of him, a new set of eyes to look at his company, a little bit of accountability on a weekly, biweekly, monthly basis, as in coaching. And one of them is still hard at work, who didn't leverage, a business coach. And the one who did is absolutely crushing it, buying 5 Series BMWs, knocking around with the Joneses as opposed to trying to keep up with the Joneses. And then the question is, and you don't need to say this, but what's going to happen intrinsically, it's going to happen as film over the room, is that they're all of a sudden going to want to be in the right side of the story, right? So again, and then you're thinking, yeah, but I can't tell that story, and I'm not Tony Robbins. You'll get a little bit better at it. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it, right? You've got to go in there. We talked about this on the pre-show today. Somebody was asking about the software road dog, and what it came down to is you got to get your nose in there, and you've got to practice. You got to press the wrong button. You got to put in numbers that are too big. And then you have to be able to read and support it. You don't want that to happen when somebody's in front of you, right? Tom Brady, my buddy, but Tom Brady threw the football in front of nobody, in front of his kids in the backyard, in front of his teammates, in front of his coaches, long before he threw it in front of, 50, 60, 70,000 people on the weekend, right? So you got to get in there and practice. You got to, show a level of respect, quite frankly, for the client that you're about to sit with and really understand this stuff. So bottom line, what I was trying to say there a minute ago is you need to understand your tools and understand where you're going to go, because then that's going to give you the flexibility when you're sitting with this individual to be able to influence them. It's going to allow you to read their body language at a higher level. It's going to read, the dynamic of their business and where that feeling of being left behind might be, at a higher level, versus you're in there, really having to concentrate, really having to think. Here's what I'm trying to say. I'm doing a bad job of this. When somebody plays hockey and they use their instincts, and they're a good hockey player, we'll assume, they play way better. When they fall into a slump, they start thinking at too high of a level. And that's when, they can't score a goal to save themselves, and they find themselves dropping off the power play, et cetera, not getting the extra rink time, right? Or, Road Dog, look, said otherwise, they'll buy your coaching from you every time if they feel that you support their dreams, justify their failures, confirm their suspicions, diminish their fears, and especially help them throw rocks at their enemies, right? So semi-related, I said this to my daughter yesterday. We were having some ice cream. I spent a little bit of time away from her, and I just got back. And we've done this many a times, by the way. So this wasn't new. But I said, baby, what's the secret to having great friends? And she says to me, to be a great friend. And then I say, what's the secret to having a great, one of the things was mommy, blah, blah. While I was away, something happened, and mommy was hard on me, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, come on, give me this, right? So what's the secret to having great friends? To be a great friend. What's the secret to have a great mommy? To be a great daughter, right? And then what's the secret to having a great teacher? Is to be a great student. Although that one I have to pretty much pry out of her. But anywho, the best brands pull on heartstrings, and you need to practice pulling on those heartstrings, and you will get better at it. And the better tools that you have to support, your coaching, I think, will allow you to coach at a higher level, Because again, when you're sitting there having to think at too high of a level with the person that you're either prospecting, the person you're trying to convert, or the person you're trying to influence as your high end coaching client who's paying you, you want to be able to be reading these types of dynamics where what are their dreams that you can support? What are the failures they've had that you can justify? Remember, just emotional. What are these suspicions that you can confirm? Well, you got to be really intuitive, and you need to be, not thinking at a super high level like a hockey player in a slump, in order to make all that happen. So there you go. And by the way, the best way to have great coaching clients is to be a great coach to them. Is where I'm trying to go with my, the dynamic of my daughter and I's conversation, right? So, boom, buddy, that's my Tony Robbins does it better than anybody else. If they watch Road Dogg Personal Power, they are going to see that done at the highest level, and I'm sure it's available on YouTube. Very simple. It's the infomercial that played 2 million times on TV that we've all seen. So what do you think, Shoots? That's my answer,
Well,
bud.
okay. So first off, there's a couple points I got to make here, okay? Because that's just what I do. Um, so the funny thing is, as you're talking, and I'm like, you and I've seen Tony live several times, right?
Yep.
And again, be it live, be it online, whatever, he tells the same stories. When
Yes.
you do a presentation, you talk about, knowing the software, knowing that, like, playing around, knowing what you're going to say when you're doing a presentation. This reminds me of when I sold insurance back in the day. I had a standard presentation that I went through. And
Yep.
yes, it's boring. And you can sit there and be like, man, this is so boring. Yeah, if you choose to play at that level. But if you choose to make it so automatic for you that you're no longer thinking about what you're saying, you're just saying it, and now you're reading their body language, you're reading everything that they're doing and they're saying, and you're able to analyze that at the same time that you're giving the presentation. That's next level thinking. And I think that's sort of where you're going with this, right? Like,
The money is in the mundane. That's it. So what coaches are, I've said this many, many a times, but success is the same movie 3 times a day, 7 days a week for 10 years. And then I apologize. Right? Because it's like nobody wants to hear that, right? So what I have done, this is an example. So in my own life, right? So again, wake up, I pound it. I'm up very consistently at 5 a.m. I'm absolutely rocking already, if not earlier. Sometimes I go straight to work, other times I do whatever I do, but I am working early, and it's fundamentally a lot of the same stuff, replying to the same, motivating the same staff, playing with whatever. That's what I'm doing, right? So what outside, so let's assume that that's like 9 to 5 for the average. So get your thrills outside of 9 to 5. So what people say is they got to change their career every 5 years because they get bored. They got to change this because they get bored. They need their business to be dynamic or they get bored, which, by the way, if that's for you and that's the way it has to be, then go for it. God bless you. And enjoy creativity, right? And that's fine. But I think what you could do, and what I have, encouraged a lot of my high end coaching clients over the years, and where they've seen a lot of value, is I've helped them go outside their 9 to 5. I'm like, go skydiving, go cliff jumping, go bungee jumping, go scuba diving. Don't go for 4 days on a holiday, go for 10 days to Mexico. And before you go, book the scuba diving, book the snorkeling, book the stuff that you're going to just love, the horseback riding, etc. Book it before you even go. So you get there, because what happens? You get there, the first day you're exhausted because of jet lag or whatever it is, right? And then the next day you're like, oh my God, I'm just going to lay on the beach. And then you get the sunburn and you're like, oh my gosh, the whole day's gone. I can't believe it. And that's, for maybe that's what they needed to do. But you know what I mean? Like, get your creativity, get your excitement outside of your 9 to 5, and do it strategically, by the way. Right. So anyway, so Road Dogg, I love what you're saying, but totally, like, the magic is in the mundane. The money is in the mundane, but everybody's looking for creativity. They're looking for excitement. And I think if you show me that $10 million business you referenced earlier, I'm going to introduce you to a business that does the fundamentals and the boring stuff over and over again, right? Like batting practice for the best, I nearly said batsman. That's cricket. I'm watching some cricket lately, but you know what I mean. The best, the best batter in the world, right? Batting practice is not exactly exciting on Monday morning. I'll give you the red hot tip. But that's what they do, right? Practice is never exciting. What Allen Iverson, Road Dog, remember that one? Practice? You're talking about practice? And by the way, that's the guy who took $100 million and lit it on fire, which possibly there might be a life lesson in there, possibly not. But I dare say so. So love it, Road Dog, and agree totally, man. Agree
But
totally.
again, I'm going to challenge you on this because I disagree. I disagree that the mundane doesn't have to be boring. When you go into doing the mundane, to you it's not the same thing because you're
Yeah.
looking for something every single time. It's like the golfer, right? Like it's the smallest little thing that they're working on. It's the cricket player. I have no idea, dude. But it may be hockey. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain thing inside of that practice that you're working on.
Yeah.
Maybe in presentation, maybe it's your tonality, maybe it's changing the story a little bit, maybe whatever it is. I think that if you're thinking that it's boring day in and day out, I'm going to go ahead and say you're doing it wrong because you need to you need to be looking at the deeper level. Like I can guarantee you when Carl's done 200 some odd more than that probably presentations live, he's not looking like at, oh my God, this is so boring. He's looking at, okay, what's the part that I'm going to focus in on today? And how can I be sharper at the end than I can be at the beginning? And how can I get them to be more engaged without taking over the meeting? How can I get, more applications at the end of this than last time? There's always something going on. Would I be offside in saying that?
Shoots. It was what you did, my opinion, what I heard, a reframe, right? So I'm like, what you said, I think, is you gotta go into the fundamentals, the basic, whatever it is that you're doing, and you got to get excited about a little 2% adjustment, a little tweak. And you mentioned the presentation 200. I've actually, that one presentation that you saw me do, I've done it 400 times, right? Remember that, Road Dog? We get 100% conversion. That's not 100% conversion to appointments. We get 100% conversion to high-end coaching clients. But I've done that one presentation 400. So you're exactly what I'm doing is I'm trying to come up with a new joke. I'm trying to come up with, well, actually, literally within the last few weeks, Pat and I, so he's COO and he's just genius around our software. You get no idea, legend. Anyway, so we had a call, and I'm going to say that it went for 2 hours. And the only thing that we talked about on the call is how to make group coaching software more entertaining. That's it. That's all we and every time either of us, which happened multiple times, we went a little bit off in this. It was like, whoa. We'll come back to that. Like that's for the next meeting, right? Entertaining. How do we make the group coaching software more entertaining? And that was it. And it was like, to some, I suppose that could be mundane as hell because we played with this group coaching. Like, you got no idea the brain cells that I have killed on group. I get a twitch, I think, when I say group coaching software. But you're right. Like we just love little tweaks. And that's what we get excited about. So Road Dog, it's a reframe. That's what you did. And I love it. And you're 100% correct. That's for the magic.
Listen, bud, I'm just here to make just to hear you say that I'm correct. It's wonderful. It's a great way to start the week.
Not
even gonna lie about that. Hey, listen, while we're on a high, why don't you close us out with one thing that our listeners can implement today into their practice?
One thing. Look, I got to tell you that last bit there where you said like the reframe is it just, get really like, here it is, right? What is, look, here's advice you'll get from a billionaire. Do what you love. And then I'm going to tell you that is proven. Forget what I think. Forget what Road Dog thinks. Forget what somebody else thinks. That's proven to be really, really bad advice, right? Because if you want to make a lot, and we'll assume that the goal is you want to make a ton of money, do what you're good at. I'll tell you that. So do what you're good at. So instead of like with your business, instead of falling in love with your business, fall in love with the marketing, fall in love with direct response, fall in love with your Facebook ad, fall in love with your client, fall in love with your client's lifestyle, fall in love with your client's results, fall in love with your client's product, fall in love with the coaching call, with your clients and how you can make them more entertaining, right? Like make them, you know what I mean? Like fall in love with the tactic as opposed to the business, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And like little tweaks, little tweaks, little tweaks, which just totally complements what you said, that reframe you gave us, Road Dog, where just take something small and then get excited about it. So I think that's a good, instead of trying to like, become a business, like I always say this, like somebody says, oh, like, why did you become a coach? And they say, I just love helping people. And I'm like, in my mind, and I hope I'm not sounding harsh here, right? But I'm like, I drive a fast car. That does not make me a mechanic, right? Don't become a coach because you like helping people. Show me that you're good at influencing people, good at persuading people, good at, moving the needle, good at like those emotional factors that we talked about, drawing out the, their feeling of being left behind, and then introducing yourself and embodying yourself as, the way for them to race to catch up. Fall in love with that and little tweaks. And I think, magic can happen. So that, you know what I mean? Like to become a coach because you like to help people is incredibly flawed generally. Maybe it's right for you and you show me anomalies, but I don't do anomalies, can't even say anomalies. I do percentages, and I'll tell you percentage wise, that's not it. When you're good at coaching, when you're good at influencing, when you're good at, gross profit margin gets you excited the way that it gets me excited. And it didn't always, let me give you the red hot tip. 10 years ago, I would never, ever, ever say that in a million years, but I fell in love with it. Rodo, maybe in closing, so we have a presentation that we're putting together behind the scenes on how to read financial statements, right? Which basically is going to be how to find your high-end coaching fees like instantly, and then how to look at financial documents and find what you're looking for. So we have a partner, he's been a client of mine for of ours, like over a decade, been to all of our live events, great guy. We do some stuff with him. And again, a client paid his fees for literally over a decade, month to month, never stopped, never. I don't think he ever will because he loves us. We love him. Great guy. Anyways, 40-year accountant. So we are talking about accounting principles and reading financial statements. And at the end of it, I don't know, maybe I should probably bring him on. I don't know, some way we should get this public. But what he said to me was like, he's like, I've been doing accounting for 40 years and you just see things so differently. And the way that, you know what I mean? Like the examples and the metaphors, and then I'll stop them and go, okay, here's what I just heard. Here's the frame. Here's the example. Here's a metaphor that will complement that perfectly. Here's where I think you're going to lose them. Here's what they're never going to understand. Here's what they don't need to understand. We're talking about, things like depreciation being a superpower of an accountant. And there's a lot of accountants, believe me, that don't understand depreciation at the highest level, the importance of gross profit margin. So just looking at a financial statement, you don't need to be able to create a financial statement. You need to be able to read a financial statement. In order to read a financial statement, I got to tell you, there's not a lot more than 10 areas that it's a bunch of confusing lingo and percentages and numbers and everything, but there's a few key places you need to go. And basically, it's like the magic is there, right? And what I said is like, look, so there's 3 financial documents that really matter. It's a balance sheet, an income statement or a profit and loss, and a cash flow statement. So I go, look, so before we explain the balance sheet, before we start, we need to have a learning objective. What's our goal? Like when they're done looking at like watching our course on reading a financial statement, what are the 3 things they're going to go away with, and the 5 areas they need to look at, and we can highlight with a red pen. I'm giving you like but you're getting it, right? That's the learning objective of the balance sheet. We're not there to teach people to become accountants. This isn't, an accounting degree course. This is reading financial statement and finding your high-end coaching fees, and frankly, changing the life of your coaching clients so they pay you forever, right? And then it's income statement. It's what's the learning objective before we start explaining it. Let's start with the end in mind and then go, boom, there's 3 things we want to take away, and there's 5 places that they need to know to look, and we're going to circle each of them with a red pen. So they go away, and we're going to give it to them as a takeaway, right? 3rd thing, cash. Anyway, so you get it, Road Dog? And it's the little things, and it's a passion that I've built over the last, I'm going to say, number 5 years. And I just love accounting, right? And I used to be 100% the sales and marketing guy that wouldn't even, I would poo-poo it. I would turn my eyes up at it going, oh my God, don't even worry about that, man. We're just going to make this guy more money. I knew margin, but I didn't really understand. I understood margin, but I didn't understand accounting. So I would just be like, look, let's just go make some more money. We'll just get to 1 million faster. We'll just get to 3 million faster. We'll just train our staff at a higher level so we don't have that same problem. Anyways, Road Dog, that was a little bit rabbit hole-ish, but get passionate about that kind of thing. Go into the mundane, go into the day-to-day, go into the fundamentals, and those little 2% tweaks jack them up big time the way you reframed it. And I think that's a good takeaway, Shoots. There you go. That's all I got.
Wow. Okay, so how can I shorten this up where I'm like, hey, Karl, can you give us the one thing without it being 15 minutes? Like, I don't know. I got to see, folks, like, there's my one thing that I got to figure out by next week. How do I prevent these?
Learning objective. That's your learning objective this week.
That's it, bud. Like, it's crazy. What's your one thing? Well, let me go on a rabbit hole about accounting for 10 minutes and give you 10. Okay, cool. Listen, folks. That's your 10 things that you should immediately put into your practice, apparently. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Business Coaching Secrets with Master Accountant Dr. Karl Bryan at the helm. And if you're not on the inside and getting access to the pre-show, or you aren't getting Karl's daily emails, you want more information on the group coaching software, or you're looking at Karl to do your taxes personally, please go to focus.com and subscribe today. Just joking about the taxes, by the way. I would definitely not have Karl do my taxes, even though that spells audit right there. Anyways, if you enjoyed the podcast, please share with a fellow coach or someone you think might make a great coach. Obviously, fans of Tom Brady and Tony Robbins, Karl's two personal favorite and heroes. And of course, we'd appreciate it if you'd rate the episode, as we know that iTunes, Spotify, all those streaming services give a heavy amount of weight towards reviews. And that is it for another week, everybody. We will see you on the next episode. And remember, progress equals happiness. Take care, everybody.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0 to train business coaches how to find any small business owner more than $100,000 in 45 minutes without them spending an extra dollar on marketing or advertising. This becomes a business coach's superpower. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.